Hello, everyone. Today we have Professor Tom Miller here from Montclair State University, who's joining us today. Tom, how's everything going today?
Good.
Good. Did you teach today?
I did.
What did you teach?
Today was my professional selling class.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, we run 2 sessions of it. It just started about a year ago. This is the 3rd semester we've run it. Basically, it's a basic course in selling. It's geared towards the business school initially, but it reaches out to every discipline because everybody has to sell sooner or later.
Right.
Your first job interview is really you selling yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So the principles behind all of that are key to success, I think, in a business career, or any career for that matter. And we're just giving them the fundamentals of it.
When was your first experience selling?
A long, long time ago.
So start us at the beginning.
So I took a job out of graduate school.
And where was this?
I went to Seton Hall.
Seton Hall.
And I had a background in finance and accounting. So when I got out of graduate school, a company called Monroe hired me. They were a calculator company. They sold calculators that started at $500.
Really?
That same little calculator you have on your wrist now.
Yeah, exactly.
Was 10 times more powerful than our $500 calculator.
You don't see any students walking around with those nowadays.
No. So my job was to design software, financial software for those calculators. Mm-hmm. And I did it, and we created an accounting machine. And I went out to train the sales force. I had about 900 salespeople. So I spent about 6 months training the sales force. When I got back, the president of the company called me into his office. And I knew I'd done a good job, but I wasn't prepared for anything. I really didn't know what it was all about. And he said, I think you can sell. I want you to go out and try selling. So for 6 months, I'll give you your salary, but you see if you can sell. At the end of the 6 months, if you don't want to do it, you can come back to full salary at the job you have, and everybody's happy. But I think you're going to like it. At the time, that job, a salesperson, was in that company was straight commission, no expenses. That means if you didn't sell anything, you went hungry. And I loved it. The simple fact that I was an accountant selling calculators to accountants gave me the sense of empathy, so I understood what their needs were. And way back when, this is 40 years ago, it was needs satisfaction selling, which is the essence of what modern sales is today. So I had the good fortune to learn that lesson 40 years before a lot of other people did.
Do you see a lot of similarities between selling then and selling now?
No.
What's different?
And I do. The fundamentals are still the same, but the tools are radically different. The fundamentals are need satisfaction, understanding what the customer wants, and the questioning techniques that a salesperson needs to have to get that haven't really changed. The identification of an opportunity has changed dramatically. Social media tools like LinkedIn and to some degree Facebook and Twitter have a much broader appeal towards the business community than simply knocking on doors, which is what I did 40 years ago. So things have changed dramatically. But in the sales call, in the providing solutions to your customer, that really is the same.
Yeah. Are you from New Jersey originally?
No, I grew up in the Midwest.
Midwest. And what brought you over to New Jersey?
My dad got transferred in his company, went to work in New York, so we moved to New Jersey.
I know you have a lot of ties right now to the New Jersey area.
Yeah, I do.
You started off at Xerox, or where did you start off?
I started at Monroe, and that lasted, I loved it, the job I was telling you about before. Mm-hmm. 7 months into it, I got seduced away by Xerox. They had a much better training program and a much larger opportunity for me.
What were you thinking at the time of switching? I'm not sure how old you were at the time, but I'm sure
I was in my early 30s.
Okay, early 30s.
I had 2 kids. Mm-hmm. I liked the idea of the Xerox sales training organization. That they were really well known for the investment that they made in their employees, and I took full advantage of that.
Were your thoughts at the time more that you wanted to, keep climbing up the ladder?
Yeah.
Or, yeah.
And I did. Ultimately, I ran a couple of companies, and I have to say, without the training that Xerox gave me, I would have never been prepared to do that.
What do you feel set you apart during that transition?
Well, I think I was a good student. I'm not the smartest guy in the room all the time, but sometimes I am.
I don't think any of us are.
Yeah, sometimes I am. And I think I got exposure to a couple of times when things were good. I was put on a fast track at Xerox, which meant that they invested, as I said, a lot of money. But I sat probably 8 to 9 weeks a year in a classroom while they paid me to learn.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned. I learned how to manage. I learned how to sell. I learned about people and how to motivate people, how to get the tools, put in place the tools that drive success and measure success, and give the feedback to the individual that what success looks like.
If you're a student today and you were looking at something similar to what you did, what would you tell them? What's something that the student should look for?
I have this conversation about once a week.
Oh, perfect.
Do something you want that you like and stick with it for the first couple of years. The reality is today, kids graduating from school this May will probably have 10 different jobs by the time they're 40
That's what you
years
keep
old.
hearing.
So by the time they're 40, they've done 10 different things. One of those things, hopefully, is going to be something that they like. So start out with something that you like or think you like so that you have fun. Because starting jobs are tough. You're low man on the totem pole. You get all the dirt work.
Right.
But you learn. And so make it something that you want to learn. Make it something you're interested in.
How did you know this was something that you liked?
I did teaching.
Teaching and
selling.
throughout your year. Everything.
I didn't know. As I said, I was convinced to try it, having doubts whether I could succeed or not. But after 2 months, I knew it was a game for me. I loved it, and I was doing well. So I didn't really look back. And ever since then, I really have been involved in something up until I retired and came to work here. Some retirement, right?
Hey, I mean, so this kind of falls in line with the teaching that you're doing currently. What made you interested in teaching, making that transition?
I was bored to death after I retired. You can only play golf in the summertime, and the rest of the time I was just sitting around doing nothing. It was just not productive. So I took on an adjunct role at a couple of schools and taught, believe it or not, accounting way back to my beginning days, and then marketing as well. And I came here as an adjunct, and a full-time opening came up about 3 years ago, and I applied for it and got the position. So I'm a full-time professor now, which is a lot different than what I'd spent most of my career at. But in reality, my job for all those years was to coach people. That was my job as a sales manager. And that's what I do now. I'm a coach.
How are you with obtaining new responsibilities within the different careers and jobs that you were a part of?
It's funny. I get really excited about them. I'm an eager learner, and when I get something new, I embrace it completely, and I squeeze as much out of that as I possibly can. And that lasts a long time. I'm back to teaching now for, I guess, 8 years, and I still have I get up in the morning and I want to come to work. I enjoy it.
How's work-life balance?
Good. The teaching is the best. I teach 4 courses. I'm here 4 days a week, but I'm home at 3 o'clock.
How was the work-life balance with the other jobs that you've had?
Some were horrible. One job I had, I commuted from San Diego to New York for a year. I put on 200,000 miles in the air. I barely saw my kids and my family. It was terrible.
Tell us a little bit about that. How was that decision-making process, and how did you?
Well, I got promoted, I accepted the promotion with a relocation to San Diego. When I got to San Diego, the opportunity was a little bit different than I was led to believe that it was. So I tried my best to hang on, but I knew I wasn't going to move. And so the whole year was one of balancing as best as I can, getting the job done that I was hired to do without relocating to the home office. It was tough. And then still having time to see my family. It was very difficult. Ultimately, I left just because I couldn't do it anymore. And I fortunately found another job as a president of a different company, a publicly held company. So I landed on my feet. It was a good thing.
Does that tend to happen a lot with those types of positions?
No. It's rare. I kind of lucked out.
I mean, it's interesting to see that some people complain about their commute, 10, 15 minutes. You're commuting from San Diego to New York.
Yeah.
What is that process like? How are you able to, get work done and make that commute?
Fortunately, it was before 9/11.
Mm-hmm.
So the security issues at airports were radically different. I basically was on a first name basis with the gate agents.
Right.
I was on an airplane almost every day, and so the planning piece of it became what can I fit in my briefcase on the plane so that I can work while I'm commuting from New York to San Diego, and I flew all over the country then too. I was in Washington, Texas, and Florida. It wasn't just the commute, but my job took me to a lot of different places in the country.
So essentially, your office, you had to walk past first class to get to.
Fortunately, I was in first class.
Oh, you were in first class. Perfect.
I had those upgrade miles, Yeah.
200,000 miles. That's
a lot of miles.
That's a lot of miles. You're probably still using them.
I used them up. No, I've expired them.
How is being a president of a company?
A lot of responsibility.
How does one become a president of a company? What's the trajectory for that?
Hard work.
I can imagine. What's
some luck's
separated
involved.
you?
I think I go back to fundamental skill sets that I learned at Xerox. They taught me how to manage people. They taught me how to manage myself. They taught me how to understand the needs of the person that I was talking to, and when possible, fulfill those needs. So, if I'm looking for a president of a company, I want somebody that has those skills, that has that background, where they can lead people, that leadership aspect of it. You lead by example, but you also lead by direction, by coaching people. And Xerox taught me how to do that. I was pretty good at it. So my results were there. I consistently overachieved my targets. Couple that with a willingness to take on more responsibility, being prepared to do it, and having the skill sets that are necessary. I won those positions. I really did. I competed with some pretty sharp people and walked away the winner both times. So
It sounds like you need a really strong mindset to kind of work your way up.
you got to be tough.
How does one in today's world build that mindset? I know it's a general question.
I guess if I were advising somebody that had it in their mind that 20 years from now they'd want to be a leader of an organization, I would probably stress the learnings that are necessary, the people skills that are required. How do you motivate people? How do you deal with situations that are difficult to control? For example, the peer-to-peer interaction that you have. You can't control what your peers do,
Right.
but you can create a persuasive argument for them to do what you're trying to do if you understand people. So I would strongly recommend that people who expect to be leaders someday acquire those skills that good leadership has, and that's empathy, emotional intelligence. If you've studied that at all, is a very good guide of where you should be strong and understand. If you don't have a strong emotional intelligence score, find out where you're weak and fix that. Personal coaching is a good idea if you can afford it.
Other than Xerox, are there any other methods that you've used to take on new skills or anything that you've used to learn throughout your time?
Towards the end, when I was later in life, after I did a consulting stint for about 3 years where I was my own boss, I had my own consulting company. My kids were going to college. So I took a sales job. And I remember when I interviewed for that job, it was a sales job that sold sales incentives. So I did mostly travel. It was the travel business. So I'd go all around the world. It was a great job. But the guy who was hiring me said, "But you managed people for your whole life. Why do you want to become a sales rep again?" And I said, because I'm tired of pushing ropes. As a sales manager or a leader, you're constantly getting things done only through other people. And if they don't do that job, it's your job to get it done. It's like pushing a rope. And as a salesperson, I can pull one rope. Instead of pushing 10, I'm pulling one. He liked that analogy, and he hired me on the spot, actually. And I never really looked back. It was a great job.
So when in doubt, have a good analogy handy.
Have a story.
Do you have any other memorable experiences that stand out to you just from any part of your career?
Probably the travel piece of it. I was able, because of the nature of the job I had, I dealt with very senior level people in the marketing departments of major corporations. And I would go on these incentive trips where the top salespeople would go to Hawaii or South Africa or Tahiti or Paris, all of those places I went on somebody else's nickel. And since they were the overachievers, everything was always first class. So I traveled the world first class on somebody else's nickel for basically 10 years. That was a lot of good memories out of that. But also during that whole time frame, I was with the leaders, the people, the vice president of marketing, the vice president of sales, the chief marketing officer. Mm-hmm. And it would be one-on-one, just the two of us at dinner, and I can pick their brains. I learned so much from those leaders, of those titans of industry, as we used to call them. I learned so much about how companies were run at the very high level that now that I bring this to the classroom, it's a very effective learning tool for the students, because these are real experiences that I had.
So you know the value of experiences when trying to move on to another career path.
Yeah.
How does one effectively pick another person's brain?
Ask them how they did something.
Mm-hmm.
Ask them what motivated them to do something. A lot of my questions were, what keeps you up at night? Mm-hmm. And they'd share with me what kept them up at night. And we kind of try to figure out how to solve that problem so that they didn't have to get up in the middle of the night. And they could live a little more normal life.
Right.
Or have something else keep them up at night. Those conversations, they were not formalized at all. Very casual, very kind of one-on-one type of conversations. On these trips that I would take, we'd bring 200 of their most successful people, but none of them wanted to talk to the VP of sales. So I was the only person. I'm the hired hand. I'm the guy that's there to see that everything runs smoothly. So the interaction that we had was plentiful. Lots of opportunity for it.
Do you have any routines that you use?
Yeah.
Or that you've stuck to, as things that you found in the past that have worked?
Yeah. There's an adage in that I learned at Xerox. I was just talking about with a colleague a little while ago, that what gets measured gets done. Mm-hmm. So I have a routine of creating metrics or some performance standards for every task that I assign to somebody or that is assigned to me. So when in the sales world, it was a quota. You had a quota. You had to sell this much or you weren't doing your job.
Right.
And easy to measure. In the business world, it's not always that easy. It's tough to measure the performance of maybe a support person, a trainer. When you look at somebody and say, how well did you train somebody? It's tough to judge the performance of a teacher. What criteria do you use? Every teacher is different. Every subject's different. But I've found that if you take the time beforehand to structure it in such a way that you create these performance criteria, these standards, that then you know when you're successful. That's how you know, or you're not successful. If you don't measure it, how will you know? You know the situations that are around. If your skill sets are built where you can solve that problem, jump in. Mm-hmm. Jump in. As a leader, you have the responsibility. As a sometime leader, perhaps you need to ask permission, or you need to make sure that you're on firm grounding. But solve the problems. Look at problems. Understand what they are. If you can solve them, solve them.
Are there any managers that stand out to you?
Yeah, there's a couple. One in particular, my last manager at Xerox, is a guy by the name of Tom Dolan. We're the same age, and very similar backgrounds. But he understood. He had a strategic thinking model that I adopted. But what he basically did was said, "You're a smart guy. You can figure this out. You don't need me. If you need me, I'm here. But I don't think you need me. Mm-hmm. Go do what you do best." And he gave you the confidence. He gave you the freedom to do what it was that you were responsible to get done. And if you needed help, he was there. But he never got in the way. And if more leaders were like that, this would be a whole different. A lot of the failures that we have in corporate America would never have failed. They had adopted that approach.
I mean, especially nowadays, I'm sure that there's so many different types of managers compared to the managers of the past, and you don't know if a lot of them are following in that direction. Is there anything that you can recommend to businesses that are trying to kind of move past where they are today?
Well, I get back to that same basic that I talked about before, the measurement tools. If you set objectives, you set goals, and they pass the concepts of being specific, being measurable, being realistic and attainable, and time-bound, they give some kind of a time frame on them, you're going to have the metrics that are required to determine whether somebody is succeeding or not succeeding. And once you understand whether they're succeeding or not succeeding, you can understand why. And if they're succeeding and you understand why, then do more of that. If they're not succeeding, then fix what's wrong. If you can't fix it, then it's a bad model and you need to restructure it. But if you don't monitor it, if you don't measure it, how will you know?
How will you know?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just thinking about that, I have to think about how others can kind of take your words and use them in their day-to-day.
Why not? I took them, they're not mine. I borrowed them from somebody else too. These are not new ideas.
Was there a time where you had to deviate from that at all?
Sometimes the tools of measurement are not readily available.
Right.
Like I said, how do you measure the success of a teacher? Do you measure it by the student successes? Some students listen, some don't. So sometimes these tools are not up to par. They're not, and you have to create them somehow, which is a big challenge. It means deviation from and you get subjective in your decision making.
That's right.
But it's better than no decision at all.
Have you noticed anything through teaching that you weren't able to learn through working?
Oh, there's an old adage that I fully endorse, is if you really want to know a subject, teach it. Because you'll learn more than you ever thought you could learn. I thought that I was a pretty knowledgeable person, and certainly in the accounting world and the marketing world. But when I began teaching, I learned an awful lot. Some days I was just a day ahead of the students. You know, I read the chapter the night before they did, and so I was the expert. But there's a lot of that in this world. Teaching teaches you a lot.
Do you see any differences from now, from when you first started teaching?
I'm better prepared. For one, I've taught the same courses many times. I think whenever you engage and embrace a new course, this course that I'm teaching now, the sales course, I built it. There wasn't one here when I started at the university. They hired me to do this. So I built the class. I built another, for the graduate school, I teach an MBA class in sales management, and I built that. Those were tasks that I wasn't sure I was up to when I first took the job. In fact, at one school I had worked as an adjunct beforehand, they asked me to develop those courses, and I said no, because I didn't think I didn't think that was something that I was competent at. As I began to get deeper here, I realized that, yeah, I am competent. I can do it. It's a lot of work, but I had some good help. I had some really outstanding support people, instructional designers in this building who were most gracious with their time and knowledge.
They kind of gave you the resources to succeed.
And a structure.
Yeah.
Yeah, they gave me the structure, and I provided the content, and they would. It was a very positive experience, that development work that I did. Very positive.
Is there anything that you see from students graduating and going into the workforce that's different from maybe how it was in the past?
If I look at what I had as resources when I graduated, and what the kids have today as resources is light years apart. You know, the internet didn't exist, email didn't exist, voicemail didn't exist. Personal computers were just coming out. So it's, the whole technology tools that kids have now, they're adept at them. They are very comfortable with the technology. Sometimes maybe too much of a dependency on it. So some of the critical thinking that they should be doing, they let Google do for them.
Right.
And that's probably not a positive. The social interaction that they get from social media, while it's a very positive part in many cases, it eliminates a lot of the face-to-face discussions. I see kids in the student union, 3 of them are sitting at a table, all of them texting away, not having the people they're with don't even count. Right. And that personal relationship, that one-on-one stuff, is very valuable stuff, and the kids are maybe losing the opportunity.
Are there any issues within sales right now that stand out to you?
Well, yeah, it's been around for 100 years, and that is that salespeople aren't trusted.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of bad eggs out there, people that will tell you what they need to tell you to get the sale, and then they're gone. And as I counsel my students, selling is the art of getting somebody to come back and buy from you again. It's easy to do it the first time. You can tell them whatever they want to hear, and you can fool them, but they're not going to come back and buy it from you if you weren't honest with them. So your integrity and your honor become your critical badges of success. If you're not honest, you don't solve the needs that the customer have, they're not going to come back. And if they don't come back, you're going to starve to death.
And that's a great point.
Yeah.
It's the second time you're going to starve to death too, so you have to die twice.
Yep.
I'm just thinking from let's say if you're someone that's just starting college and you don't know the first thing about selling, and you see the word selling, what would you tell that student? You
sell every day. As I said before, whether you know it or not, you came here and you sold yourself to the university that you got. They accepted you.
Mm-hmm.
Your first girlfriend or boyfriend, you sold yourself to them in the sense that they wanted to be your partner.
Mm-hmm.
So you're selling, and that doesn't go away. In fact, there's more and more of those opportunities. When you get into the business world, I don't care what you do in a company, you're selling somebody. Yourself, mm-hmm. You're selling it to your boss, you're selling it to your peers, you're selling it to real selling to your customer. But yeah, selling is part of the life. You don't know it, but if you get trained properly in how to do it right, then you can have a much better life.
I think there's a lot of single people out there that just Googled sales techniques to kind of pick up on that.
Do it. Yeah, it's a good idea.
Were you tell me a little bit more about your life outside of work and how you were able to kind of manage that within each of the different positions that you've held? Is that something that you feel you had to put a lot of work into, or is that something that kind of was able to fit itself within that?
I think you have to do both. You have to put work into it to make it fit. Mm-hmm. For example, the job I had where I was selling sales incentives, it required a lot of entertainment. And sometimes I'd have to deal with people that I didn't like. I just didn't trust them, or but they were the VP of whatever, and they were my client, and I had to help them solve their problems. But I didn't like them as a person. Sometimes that can be a difficult thing to work through.
What do you do in that situation?
What I used to do? I would take them to places I wanted to go, so I would have fun. I'd take them on the golf course because I love to play golf, or I'd take them to a show.
I'm sure they didn't turn you down on that.
No, everybody likes to be entertained. Yeah, I had a nice expense account that they expected me to use it. And I spent a lot of money entertaining clients. And sometimes those clients weren't the kind of people that I particularly cared for, but that didn't stop me from doing my job. Right. Just what shifted is I would do what I wanted to do rather than maybe what they wanted to do.
Now, where did you spend it? What location did you spend the majority of your time selling?
There was a couple. I knew here in New Jersey, the city, in my last job, most of my clients were in New York. And I spent some time in upstate New York selling as well. I was headquartered in Boston, but I flew to Syracuse and Buffalo and Rochester.
Did you feel like selling in different locations was different?
It can be. Yeah, when I was at Merritt's, the last company I worked for, I had a lot of activity outside of the home office. So I'd fly to Atlanta to deal with some people at Canon. I'd fly to Texas to deal with some people at Pepsi. So you get into different cultures, notwithstanding the international side of it, which is a lot of difference in culture.
I can imagine.
But it's a different selling process in New York City, not process, but technique selling in New York City than it is in Florida. Mm-hmm. Florida, they're much more laid back. You can't use the same kind of New York minute style of approaching people. But if you try to smooth talk somebody, that you work well in Atlanta, it's not going to work in New York. So you've got to. It's called adaptive selling, and it's a real thing, and good salespeople learn how to do it.
What's a way that somebody that could be nervous selling can put themselves in the right mindset?
The biggest one, and I teach my kids this. The biggest one is if you don't know what you're talking about, you can't make a good presentation. Think about it. Every time you make a presentation in your life that it didn't go well, it's probably because you didn't know your subject matter. The people that you were talking to knew more about it than you did. And where you had a positive selling or a presentation, you probably knew more about your subject than anybody else in the room. That gave you the confidence to make a good presentation. So it's facts. Understand what it is that you're selling. Always be prepared. Never go into a meeting knowing less than you need to know, or than you could know.
I think that's really important.
Yeah.
Can you talk us a little bit about day-to-day for a salesperson?
Yeah, it's a longer day than most people think.
Right.
Most people think a sales guy is just slap you on the back and take you out to dinner. And, there's a lot more to it than that. My typical day, I'd get up early in the morning, 6-ish, 6:30, shower and all that sort of stuff, get dressed. Back in the early days, it was a coat and tie, so that was the required outfit. And we worked out of an office, so I'd commute. Typically, I would then get to the office before 8. I always got in the office before 8. There's some quiet time that I'd plan my day. And then when I was a pure salesperson, I'd try to be out of the office as much as I could. Being in the office, you're not really accomplishing. You're filling out reports. You're making phone calls that go nowhere. So I would try to be with people, see the people face to face, be in the turf, in the territory. And then at the end of the day, I'd summarize everything that I did and keep good notes, write it down, or later in life, use technology, use the tools to capture it. And then at night, just after dinner, I'd go back into my office at home, and I'd spend 20 minutes or so planning my next day, cleaning up maybe administrative tasks that I hadn't completed. And I'd do that on a regular basis. And then, frankly, when I was just in the sales role, that was all I did was sell, not the management, not the running the company stuff. When I was just in a pure sales role, I used to take some personal time for myself every week. I'd take a half a day off and go play golf.
So it's important just making sure that your mental is good, because selling is mostly mental at the end of the day too. You got to make sure you're refreshed and ready to go.
Yeah, you need some kind of release. And mine, for me, it was golf in season.
Well, I know you like to stress the area of preparedness. Are there things that can pop up when you're selling that you have to be ready for?
It always happens. I call it agility, or being able to dance. You've got to be quick thinking. A good salesperson, you're going to have adversity come in front of you all the time. That's just the nature of the beast. It's lurking behind every question. It's behind every face. There's a potential disaster about ready to occur.
Are there other things that you would like to do within sales or within business or within teaching that you're still looking to do?
I'm not interested in going back to selling. I'm not interested in going back to work in the business world. I'm very happy with my work-life balance now. This is not. I put a lot of hours in. There's a lot of administrative stuff. Grading is always a burden that a professor takes. But it's all stuff that I signed up for. I do enjoy the student interaction. I enjoy that a lot. I love to see kids get it. I love to see. Just yesterday, one of my former students stopped me in the hall and said, "I got the job." And I said, "Which job was that?" He said, "The one you referred to me." And I thought to myself that I made a difference in that young woman's life. And it's a good job. It's a job that she'll do well at too. I'm convinced of it. But that's a very rewarding feeling that you made a difference in a young person's life. And I get to do it almost every day.
Well, right. Can you tell from first impression whether somebody would be a good salesperson?
No.
It's just something that inherently comes out.
Yeah, and usually by experience. I tell the stories that I've actually tracked the successes I've had. I've probably interviewed in my life 1,000 people or more.
Really?
I've hired 300 or 400, and of the 300 or 400 that I hired in a sales role, I'm only about 50% successful. About half of them don't make it.
Really?
Yeah.
That's great. Thank you so much for coming. I really
pleasure.
appreciate it. Is there anything that you want to say that's new with you, or is there something that you want to leave students with?
No, I just, this is a great opportunity for students to, this school is an affordable opportunity for what's going to be the basis for their future. take it seriously. That doesn't mean you can't have fun, but do your job. Just do your job and do the best you can. A lot of this stuff will sort itself out, but apply yourself. Don't take this for granted.
How does somebody stay in that mindset and not, worry about what you can't expect?
Well, if the things that happen to you that you don't expect derail you, it means you haven't planned yourself properly. You haven't created a firm enough base for yourself to withstand those. Life's going to treat you really crummy someday, probably more than once. And in the business world, you're going to get blindsided by stuff that you had no way of knowing it was coming after you. But if you've prepared yourself and you're as knowledgeable as you can be about what it is that you're supposed to do, and in a manager's role, that's people management, that's understanding your people, then you'll be able to sort your way through it. It'll sort itself out.